Welcome, everyone. It is July the 16th today, and it's Sandra Alexei, and I'm from the YouTube channel Game Changer, the new relationship model, and my personal muse, where I am an astrologer, a spiritual coach, and business coach. Anyway, it's not about me today. Today, it is about Nicole Powell and Matthew Ashton. Okay, I have worked with the two of them, and they're going to talk about relationships and the work that they do. And I'm very excited because this particular time of this decade, of this year, of this month, okay, and the challenging times is all about relationships. Okay, about personal relationships and how you relate as a couple and how you relate in the world. So welcome and take it away. Who wants to go first?
Oh, they're looking at me. See how he lets me go first because I'm the feminine.
That's
Gentleman, right? The feminine leads. So my name is Nicole Powell, and I work as a spiritual medium, both online and in person. And my work is to connect with those who've passed on, as well as doing intuitive healing work and working in energy work as well. And so I love this topic today, specifically about with Game Changer and relationships, because I do feel the majority of my work is connecting with my clients, with their loved ones who've passed on through family dynamics, and being able to heal two worlds and bring that union together so that we can be stronger, more humble human beings and end the pain that we're carrying in our lives as well.
perfect. Oh, and I forgot to say that everybody needs to go back, because about 2 weeks I interviewed specifically you, Nicole, as a spiritual medium and healer. Okay, go ahead, Matthew.
Cool. Yeah, so while Nicole works primarily with people, well, the spirits that have passed over, I work with the gene keys very much in this world, but through this world. So, it's the gene keys is something that Sandra's been doing now for a while too, and it really helps us to open up into many different dimensions. And so we view life, especially relationships, through the lens of what's called the Venus sequence in the gene keys. And so it takes us through some deep contemplative work. Although I'm a guide through the work, and I see a lot of people going through a lot of challenging times right now. And so it's really bringing them back to their own intuitive awareness and navigating their own path through life. The gene keys act as guideposts. They're very accurate guideposts, and they very much reflect these aspects of our being. And so that's the way I've worked with people and continue to work with people. That's the primary modality, but I love bringing in the concepts of mythology, magic, and all of that kind of thing into this body of work. So gene keys is one of the vessels I use, but it's all relationships, so it comes up again and again. And it's been really neat to see how Nicole very much has her pathway of working with people, and I have very much my pathway, and there's real neat crossovers at times, and also how the experiences, people are coming and experiencing very different things with each of us, but they're navigating their way through life.
Love it, love it. And I do have to say, I've worked with Nicole and with Matthew, and with the gene keys. I've done the Venus sequence a couple of times. I've had personal things, and it's been a journey. And you have to remember, I've journeyed all my life, decades.
Mm-hmm.
I came into the gene keys. It's kind of like it was the finishing touch for me. It will never be finished. It's always a journey. Okay. And then the neat thing is how you guys got together, if you can share, because I need to be able to let people understand that there are relationships that are working. How do they work? How do they start out? How do they do it? Rather than just saying it in a book. It's really having the experiences. And so I really appreciate that you will share those. Okay.
Well, Matthew and I first connected on Good Friday. I believe it was April 11th or something like that in 2012. which was another time that we were going through a massive astrological change. And
Yes.
that was probably the last time that I had a complete shakeup in my life, where I left my career, I left my house that I had a mortgage, I changed towns, I moved back to Vancouver Island, and I was moving back into my family home before I started a new life. And that's in 2012 when I decided that I wanted to start working as a healer and intuitive full time as well. So I took great risk. And in the process of selling my house and getting out and quitting my job, I actually met Matthew on Facebook online, because I was looking for new contacts and friends and building my community back in Victoria where I was moving. And he was one of the first people I connected with.
Wow.
And she'd actually heard about me through a mutual friend a few months before, and it was just connecting the dots after the fact. So he kind of takes credit for setting us up unconsciously as well.
It was a marketing workshop on how to market your holistic business. And so his best friend was my buddy in the workshop for the weekend. We hit it off like that. And then I remember him talking about Matthew, and I remember something, there was like a goosebump up the back of my spine, and going, I'm going to have to figure out who that man is. I might have to Google him on Facebook. And so there was a little bit of like behind scenes looking, you know how on Facebook you just add new friends and friends comment and stuff like that. Maybe in 2012 it was a little less common to do that, but now it seems to be the norm. But that is how we initially met.
So who contacted who first on Facebook?
I wrote him.
Yeah.
Did you? Okay. And Matthew, what did you think? What happened for you?
When she connected and we reached out, we didn't actually meet in person for about, what was the, she's better with this timeline stuff than me.
Maybe about a month.
It was about a month. I was going to say that, so I'm not that far gone. And so it was, we were talking online. We talked online initially just through typing online, and I felt a real connection there. And then when we had a few Skype sessions, and we talked for hours, and there was just a timelessness about it. And we shared our passions, and we had a lot of things in common that we enjoyed. And, you know, we still do. We have lots of differences in what we do and the adventures in life and things like that. But there's a lot of things that brought us together that we had in common. And there was just, you know, for me, I'd had a number of relationships before, and you just didn't feel right, even though they were amazing people. But when I met Nicole, there was just a feeling of rightness about it.
Really?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It didn't mean I still didn't have shit to work on inside of myself,
Right.
But there was a knowingness that it felt very right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'd like to add to that.
Yeah.
I'd had a lot of relationships in the past, or even friendships, that were super intense, all inclusive, all in, fast pace, and then explosions, right? And with Matthew, it's like a sense of calm. It's almost easy, peaceful, and I feel like that's rare in long-term relationships, where it's almost like Matthew's been my safe relationship, where it's almost like in other areas of my life, or work colleagues or friendships, that's been a little bit more work as well. And so I find that interesting, because usually it's in marriages where you have your most intense strength challenges. But I do actually feel like I've been blessed with a bit maybe of an easier load with Matthew as well.
I'm an easier load.
Yeah.
I'm a wide load, but I'm easier.
I think Matt Kahn talks about there's twin flame relationships where it's like very explosive, and then there's soulmate relationships that are very calm, peaceful, accepting, and it's almost like you're lifelong connected, and it's you don't always have that most like intensity grit work that feels hard. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it's interesting because both of you are very powerful people. Okay. And I think relationships are about creating a sacred space. I think that's part of the thing that's missing today. And it's like, how hard do you have to work at it? And for me now it's more about a soul relationship, like to be able to be supportive of the soul relationship, because your physicality is one thing, but the depth of the spirituality and the soul is where we really go. And maybe that's what you're talking about more.
Mm-hmm.
The safety, you know,
a sense of understanding with each other.
Right.
Yeah. We challenge each other, and we sort of, you know, we really connect with each other. If either of us is going through challenges, it's like, it's always, we can help each other align. Say if I'm falling into patterns of blaming or complaining, Nicole will just gently remind me, right? And so I can just reflect inwards on that. It's like, okay, what is this? So there's that within the journey together, where it's almost like accountability buddies as well, right? As well as the, you
Right.
know, so yeah.
So I think that you have to be pretty secure and feel pretty safe to be able to accept the personal responsibility and accountability for something that you have done or that the other person has done. Because it's not about, it's just like when you do sessions with your clients too, and it's with, if I'm going to do a session, it's the same kind of thing. I have to share what I'm seeing, okay? And it's like, you want to be able to see what's really going on as opposed to just having it fluffy. So if you see Nicole Matthew doing something that is maybe sabotaging yourself or not acceptable, I'm not sure how you would say it, or vice versa. It's a matter of love, okay? And it's funny because what's her name? Christine Northrup really had a saying about love here just a few months ago. Like it's love, it's beautiful, it's accepting, it's unconditional, it's whatever. And she goes, true love is seeing what can be a challenge and being able to help that person through their challenging time. Or well, the way she said it was just beautiful to me. I really connected with it. And so how can we do that? And so not fighting. But I think that Matthew and Nicole, both of you, is you understand the shadow work, so that sometimes when you come together, some relationships maybe are just about to trigger things so that there is healing. Does that make sense?
It does. And that's interesting, because just last week I was listening to Carolyn Miss talk about archetypes, and she says that the marriage archetype has nothing to do with love. It's 100% about survival. And so
wow.
Yeah. And so recognizing that in marriage, love is just one aspect of it, but that's not enough. It's about reliving pretty much childhood and survival mechanisms and root chakra of how you show up and survive in this world, and how you can be supportive of each other without enabling each other or pulling each other down together.
I love that, because basically what, Matthew, that, and this is what this is about how we can become whole beings and not be vampires or parasites or anything, but be whole and help each other be whole beings with left and right brain, head, heart, hair, and masculine and feminine, and be able to be whole and stand self, rather than but it has to be a benefit of both people. Okay, beautiful.
Yeah.
When you do the Venus work, you'll see that, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's was some of the central theses around the Venus work. When I first encountered shadow work, it was, okay, this is helpful. First of all, I looked at it and I could see, oh, this is explaining those parts of me I don't want to share with the world. These are those parts of me, my fears, my doubts, my frustration, my guilt. Guilt was a huge one for me. Turns out that's the Gene Keys reveals to me, that's one of the core wounds I'm here to heal. And so for me, it's being able to have access to that. And if there's something that I've learned through the Gene Keys more than any other aspect that taught the shadow, was that, it was, for me, it was befriending the shadow and seeing through the shadow, knowing that through every shadow, there's a gift. So when I see a shadow manifesting through somebody, whether it's myself or another, it's recognizing that there's a gift wanting to express, right? It's getting caught up through the intellectual paradigms that somebody's living through. With the Venus sequence, and when we're working with it, it's I can't do the work of somebody else. I can't do another person's shadow work. And what I can do is I can hold them in the light of that. my shadows. It's really, what are my shadows? When I'm seeing another person's shadows, and those shadows are triggering something within me, the only thing I can reflect upon is, well, what's the shadow that's being triggered here? Is it guilt? Is it shame? What is it? So I can sit with that, and I can be with that. And then when others are struggling, and I can see, it's like, it's so easy through things like gene keys or astrology, or to reduce people to what we've seen in a chart or a system. But ultimately, it's that heart to heart connection, right? And so to be able to see through what's being expressed in front of us, to actually see through to the soul of another, right? To see through to the soul of that being, to see through the shadow to the gift that's seeking to emerge. And it doesn't mean that we're Pollyanna. It doesn't mean we're ignoring it. It doesn't mean we're avoiding it. For both Nicole and I, a big part of it has been forgiveness work, right? In our own relationships, self-forgiveness, forgiving one another, and then forgiveness and supporting that. In fact, my purpose gene key is forgiveness, and her life's work gene key is forgiveness. We've mirrored each other there, and it was a big learning lesson and experience for us to be able to share with others that too. And so there's, again, it's like continuing to return to, what's this meaning for me? If I'm reacting to another, it doesn't help if I project further reaction out into the world. So I can step away, I can reflect, and what is this for? What is this bringing to my experience? How is this supporting me and this other that I'm in relationship with?
I think that's fascinating. First and foremost, Matthew, in the astrology work that I do, is like, I look to the nodals. I'm more the transpersonal and look to the nodes. And within the nodes, and I learned this from a woman from Europe. I had taken a course and did some exams in Denver a few years ago. And she just worked with nodes, nothing else. And I was really fascinated. And so with the nodal work, it's based on Carl Jung. Okay, and so in the south node, that's where our shadow is. And we say, in order to get to the gold or get to the light, you need to honor and own the shadow, and then you can move and you get to the light. And so there's a few things people do. They will stay in here and they say, I'm comfortable here, so I'm not moving, I'm afraid. Number one. The second one they do is they go, oh, I'm just going to jump over there and I'm going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's done. It's about the integration. And if you look at a lot of Carl Jung's work, he actually did astrology. And that's one of the things that attracted me with the gene keys, because it's based on the I Ching and it's based on the time. And so for me, it just kind of worked. It's fascinating. It just blossoms and unfolds a person more. Okay, is that he said, you can be in therapy for 10 years. And if you have a really good, like he also was the founder of the Myers-Briggs and that type of thing. So he says, if you look at that, you can have a shift in consciousness that it can start your healing right away. Not that you're going to heal in 2 hours or something, but as far as I know, people that have gone to therapy for 10 years and nothing has changed. And so there is the insanity of it, is doing the same thing over and over, and if there is no change. So if people will say something to me, or they're coming to you, as which I'm sure that, well, how has it changed, and do you want to change it? And the whole thing is about pointing your finger. But this is another thing. Still, I will have this kind of thing. It's like, so if I'm reacting, I can react to something just like you and like Nicole, you would react to him, or Matthew, you would react to her. Do we react or we respond? And so taking a deep breath, and there's a lot of things I've learned working with both of you, is taking a deep breath and staying in the moment, and instead of reacting is responding and just holding that part for a moment. But they say that, and this is what will turn off a lot of people, I think, about the shadow work, which I've been told is if something's bothering me, then that's something that is really inside of me, and I shouldn't be blaming or saying the other person. And I just can't buy into that. I think that we each have our own things, and maybe it is a response, but maybe we've come together to kind of trigger each other to do our own personal healing. I'm not sure about that, Matthew. I don't know, either one of you, if you can say what you think about it, because I think a lot of people, as soon as they hear the shadow work, they go, well, somebody said that if something bothers me and somebody else, it's all my fault. So they've put up a wall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I feel that's a lot to do with perception. Like if there's
Right.
something wanting Matthew to do, and I keep going, hey, do this, do this, do this. I need you to be this or do this. Really, it's turning around as what am I lacking within myself that I'm maybe trying to get him to fulfill for me? And that's the codependence, right? So that's where you can reflect back and do the inner work of, okay, this is about my empowerment. Because truly, if I were to stand fully in my power, that light would shine so bright that naturally he would pick up on it and do it himself. But if I'm tunnel vision on him going, I'm picking at him, all it's doing is shrinking the energy and putting us back into the darkness.
I love that. Now I have to bring Game Changer, because that's the bottom line. This was about moving from a codependent decade or energetic field to more of an interdependence. And we can only do that when we are whole beings.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, you know, Carl Jung, towards the end of his life, he said, thank God I'm young and not a Jungian. And it speaks to that whole idea of perceptions around and interpretations, right? Misinterpretations of what is said. And I feel like any of us that's sharing our words with others, you know, if we speak, then there's always going to be that risk of misinterpretation and misunderstanding. People are going to see things, hear things through the lens of their own understanding. They're going to hear it through their own wounding. And, you know, it's like, that's why a big part of this work is listening, right? More so than when somebody's showing up in my life with their wounds. I've had to dig deep into this with myself. I was the king of advice in my life, and I still have to be aware of noticing that. And over time, I've learned to become more of a listener, because when I listen to another, and I mean truly listen, then I can see them empowering themselves without me needing to fix or change or do anything, right? Because it's like, unless I'm accepting this is what they're feeling in this moment, then I'm resisting, I'm pushing against, I am reacting to what is. But when I can accept, oh, this is how they're feeling, right, in this moment, and it doesn't mean I agree, but I can be considerate, right? So, you know, somebody might say, oh, God, you haven't done the dishes again. You said you were going to do the dishes. And, you know, my reactive mind would say, I did the dishes this morning. Right? But in the considerate, it's like, well, I don't want to totally invalidate the other person's feelings. So if I can say, okay, I can understand that, yeah, you know, I didn't do the dishes in this moment, or over time, there's been a lot of times when I haven't done the dishes, but can we acknowledge that I'm, you know, starting to do the dishes here? And because it's like, you know, we can have this all or none perception of people and things. And so I feel like, you know, when we talk about doing the shadow work and going inwards, you know, there's a lot of things happening in the world right now that we can react to. It doesn't mean that we're passive and we don't speak up on them. But when I can step away and recognize, first and foremost, I'm reacting. When I can sit with that and notice, what is this? What is this? Then when I respond to another, it can come from a place of, I can allow myself to be led by the Spirit within. I can hand it over, right? When Nicole does her channeling work and her mediumship, there's stuff Nicole would say to people, you agree with this? She'll say it to them in the moment, and she'll be like, she'll apologize afterwards. I'm sorry, I don't know where that came from. But and you've had that too, Sandra. Yeah. And I feel like that's when we really hand ourselves over. There's a real trust that comes through there. And I was talking to somebody about this yesterday, the difference between the violent, wounded masculine and the fierce feminine. And that comes from a space of inner knowing. So when we talk about, it's like, yes, there can be that dysfunctional approach where it's just like everything's a mirror, so it's all my fault. And that's not what shadow work is saying, right? There's a moving from blaming everybody else to blaming self, to recognizing that, like you said a few moments ago, we're all playing out some story for another in some way. And so even when I say something that triggers Nicole maybe, and it wasn't intentional, right? And vice versa, as long as we can step back and reflect and you've seen it, or things like this in other relationships too, where it's like both of you were meeting in the conversation, but both of your wounds were triggered by some other time and place, some event in some other time and place. And until those are healed, you keep meeting up in the wounding. You see what and quite often in relationship, it doesn't matter whether it's your friendship or your work relationships, is that when you start to do the inner shadow work, your whole frequency shifts. And as you do so, others around you respond to it, and they don't even know why they're doing it, but there's shifts that happen there. It doesn't necessarily mean the relationship stays together, but there's shifts.
Yeah, I think, and I wrote, I think in my first book, there was a whole chapter on mind, body, and spirit transformation, even though it was a business spa book. Okay, there are people, I think, that are transformers. So once you have your energy, kind of balanced, and there's different times it's more balanced than others. And even on a plane, if you're sitting beside someone, and I think both of you would disagree, if it's like a synchronicity thing, but you can help shift that other person, just shift them by just sometimes being there, just your presence, especially if you have found the balance and you're grounded in your own being, and they can be yapping and upset and whatever, and all of a sudden they just start to feel better, and they're more, I would say, grounded. And this is really important right now, because I just want to share for just a second, then I want you to finish off, because maybe you can address some of these things. This is some of the stuff that I've heard that I'm working with clients, and typically right now there is some young women that are at home, okay, and they have children, and the husbands either, or their partner, let's put it, because some are married, some are not. And I like the way you talked about marriage, which Carolyn Mize said, okay. And so typically a lot of them do not have a career, so they got married young and they have the children, okay, and they're at home, and their other is out working or whatever, and they feel lonely, okay. So, and I believe that it's simply because they are not really connected to themselves, but what they do is the longer the other person's away, then they start going on Facebook and start talking, say, with some other males or whatever type of thing, okay. And then they start questioning their own relationship, and it's like, oh, well, he's not spending enough time with me, he's not doing this. And I will actually always say to people that you should get the 5 Languages of Love. That's another book where people will, some will tell you they love you, buy you flowers, do things for you. There's just a difference, whatever way. So that's the one thing I'm seeing from the feminine point of view. Also, is that what happens is they'll typically find somebody else and they leave. And so then they leave to go with the other person, and then they split the children, and then there's parent alienation. Okay, that's the big one. But the big one, the huge one that's coming up over the last few months, which is really interesting, is people saying, I don't really want a relationship. Mm-hmm. I want my freedom, which is really interesting, Matthew, because freedom is one of the gene keys, okay? And somebody I know that has the freedom one is like, I just want to be free. I don't want a relationship anymore. There's just too much. I can't do what I want. I whatever. So is it a matter of talking to them about it? And then the next one is people are in relationships and they've already started another relationship with somebody else. And so they've come to me. I mean, this has been even like a year ago, and they, well, talk to me about my my boyfriend or this new person I met, and I won't do it. I just say, I need to be with you. I just need to see you first and foremost and what's happening in your typical environment. But I'll send you, you can go to somebody else. I'm not going to do it because now it's too convoluted for me. Again, it's like self-discovery. Where are you at this particular time? And maybe look at what your partner right now, or what the family, what the dynamics are. That's why I'm saying it's the dynamics of the situation. Okay, the relationships before you jump ship to go to the next one. So those are the things that I'm seeing. And so maybe you could share what you're seeing, or how they, or what they should be doing. Like I just shared what I thought they should be doing. And I love the Gene Keys. I mean, I have learned so much, Matthew, from them, and working with you, Nicole. It's just amazing. Okay. It's like, because you're both very grounded and yet spiritual individuals. So you have that alignment with spirit, which is what I'm always looking for, is alignment with spirit. And the reason I really enjoy both of you is that you have this relationship, and you have an authentic, honest, healthy, loving, dynamic, true relationship. It's not like, hi, sweetie, or this or that, because I know, I've seen it. I see people put on Facebook, hi, baby Capes, loving you, whatever. And 6 months later, it's like they're not together anymore.
I think the saying goes, the more you post about how much you love your husband on Facebook, the worse the relationship actually is. Is
that what it is?
Because it's the masks that you're putting up because you're trying to fool yourself. It's like you're trying to believe that you are something other than what you actually are going through. So whenever I start to see the pounding of like, I love my husband so much, or oh my God, look what he bought me today, and I'm like, oh, that relationship's on the rocks.
Okay, so that's real. So it's not just my thinking. That's what I thought like,
oh,
really question myself. No, because it's just to be authentic. Authenticity is such a big thing, in transparency and emotional honesty, I believe. Like I have to say, if there's something bothering me, I mean, I was single for 25 years, okay? And yes, had relationship, but lived on my own. And I'll never forget, a friend of mine said, you really understand relationships when you're in one. And the whole thing, it's easy to be the guru sitting on the mountain. I am the Buddhist monk sitting there, okay, and but when I have to come down and I have to be within, live life on a daily thing, and work with people, work with a partner, be at work, have a family, whatever the family dynamics are, our lineage, that's what takes the work, and that's where we grow. And my saying is, we burn the dross. And so we have to go through the challenge of the self-discovery, okay, and see what's really happening.
Totally. And I feel like you described two opposite pendulate of the yo-yo, right? It's almost like, yeah, you want to play the Buddhist monk where I don't need relationship, I'm fully independent, or the full codependence. But it's like they're forgetting about the interdependence, which is in the middle, right? Because what you're talking about with young women getting married, having kids, and never seeing their husband, and then, I see it with readings, it's like they're married, but yet they're asking about this other guy and if he's in love with me and all this stuff, and I'm like, no, that's not what we're doing here today. But it's playing the rescuer and the damsel in distress, and wanting something outside of yourself to fulfill your needs within. But as we know, that's only temporary, and eventually you will have to meet yourself, right? And relationships, that's where we're at in humanity and consciousness, is that we don't get to sit in mountaintops, praying our way to enlightenment anymore. We have to be through physical relationships to work through ourselves to heighten our consciousness as well too. So when you talk about how people don't want to be in a relationship anymore, that's just as much as a shadow, because it's saying, I'm not willing to go there. But we all know about reincarnation, and whatever you don't heal in this life, you kind of have to do it again, right? So,
or even if you don't heal it in this relationship, the next relationship
one is going to show up.
It
so what
in a different way.
Yeah, what we see is women leave their husband, they go off with his new boyfriend, and then 6 months in, oh, it's the same problem all over again. Or maybe reverse roles. Now he's the cheater and you can't handle him being the cheater, and you were once the cheater. And so it's almost like it goes yo-yos back and forth. And that's where people call life so cruel. But really, it's about truth and simplicity and honesty. And again, if you can take all the herbs and supplements in the world, but if you're lying to yourself, you're going to get sick.
And can I say that living with a psychic is the reason that I know I can't get away with things. No, we're both very sensitive, and sometimes she will recognize that there's something going on with me before I'm even aware of it, because she can feel that deep into that. And so, there's things there where she'll say it, and she'll help me to become more honest with myself, because she saw something I wasn't seeing in myself. And you speak of the loneliness piece, and that's actually, when you journey into the Venus sequence, which is the healing of relationships, we hit a part called the SQ, which goes deep into our childhood. And we actually experiencing the loneliness even within relationship is part of the journey, because nobody can complete that part of the journey for you. And so we go into loneliness. And so a lot of times on this, and you'll hear in some spiritual circles where it's almost like loneliness is wrong because we're always connected to the divine, which is true. But if loneliness is what I'm feeling in this moment, then I'm going to honor and respect that. And so I have moments of deep loneliness in this journey, because I know I'm supposed to go there on my own. This isn't a journey that Nicole is going to help me with. And Nicole had a journey going through some health stuff recently where that was her journey. And so it's like, it's in that depth of that loneliness that I really, it's appreciating that loneliness. And it's through appreciating it that we do realize how connected we are to one another. But so often in that loneliness in relationship, that's where people want to skip out, but it's actually where we're in the depth of that healing work. And you also mentioned that 55th gene key, and that's a pattern. There's two gene keys that work together, the 59th and the 55th. The shadow of the 59th is dishonesty, where we're dishonest with ourselves. The gift is intimacy, into me see. And so it starts with honesty with self, right? And people show up in our lives. They can be kind or even unkind reflectance of that dishonesty with ourself. But the juggle I often see with people who have the 59th and 55th gene key is that they really value freedom, which is the gift. The gift of the 55th is freedom, right? And the balance is finding freedom within intimacy, like Nicole talked about. Before I met Nicole, there was a belief system in me. It's actually before I met my yoga master. My yoga master is married, and he's a householder yogi. But up until then, I didn't believe that the spiritual journey could be met through relationship. And like Nicole was saying there, most of us aren't destined to go and spend our lives meditating in the Himalayas or even up on Mount Shasta. We might have experiences there, and we have moments there, but most of us are being drawn to living life through relationships. And so the key is not to find freedom outside of the relationships, it's finding freedom within the relationships. Freedom and intimacy within the relationships. And the 55th gene key is one that's affecting the whole planet right now. And the 59th gene key, the transmission around that is it could be another 1,000 years before we see true intimacy. Who knows, right? Because it's asking a lot of humans. Right now, we're seeing the fear of one another. Right? We're seeing that playing out in our world, where it's almost like the shadows got to rear itself, where we see the exact opposite, that there's a total lack of intimacy to be able to reach the intimacy.
Exactly. The interesting thing is with astrology, it started actually in 2011, 2012, moving into the Aquarian, okay? And I forget who wrote the Aquarian Conspiracy, Marilyn Ferguson. A great book years and years ago. But the whole thing is December 20th of 2020, we actually move. We have two big planets moving into Aquarius, and then Pluto, which is the big baby, in 2023. So I have a lot of faith that we are really going into that, because the whole idea of an Aquarian relationship is we become whole. We don't have that neediness. we come in alone, we leave alone, and we're going to share this time. We're going to share this time and we're going to learn. And so some people have said to me that I have an illusionary idea about relationships, and I don't really think I do. I think that I'm typically a Capricorn. Things can be tough. We got to be pragmatic. We have to be a realist, but I'm also very spiritual and being really honest, and I can't not be who I am. I have to be who I am, and that's the emotional honesty. And that's why I think right now I'm going to say to everybody, I really believe, especially like we're 6 months into 2020.
Yeah.
Got 6 months left. Mars just went into Aries. And listen, I'm going to share this with everybody, and I'm not sure who you're going to go to. It's yours, but find somebody that's really good, that can be honest with you, that is not going to fluff you up. Okay. But you have till January the 6th, which is interesting because that's my birthday. Mars is in Aries, and the most extraordinary thing, it is activating the self-discovery. It activates everything in the chart. But right now, with the Venus going into the morning star, with everything the way it's set up, this is our greatest chance for self-discovery. And that whole thing right now is we're looking at truth versus non-truth, and we're looking at the collective. And it was funny because when I talked to what's his name, Jason, the other day, we talked about looking outside of ourselves and then going within and being within, and you guys can help people be within. Okay, is that it's too noisy, it's too busy, and I've learned a lot about my immaturity. Let's say that at this particular time. But the whole thing is Wayne Dyer, and I know you talk a lot about Wayne Dyer, both of you, is I'll never forget when he said he was at Maui sitting outside and he was meditating. And he was upset because the guy was going around and mowing the lawn, and he got irritated. And then he said, hold it. I am allowing the outside world to irritate me. So, and I always think about that with relationships, and even now, because somebody could irritate me. And normally I would, and now it's just so, instead of reacting, it's responding. You can have the strong boundaries. You don't need to put up any abuse. It's about honor and dishonoring yourself and everything. But I really suggest to everybody that's listening that you take the time. And you know what? You all have vehicles, or most of you do, and you got to change the oil and you got to put tires on it and whatever. How about maintaining yourself? Okay. How much money do you spend on your lattes and that? And it doesn't matter to me. To me, it's about, especially at this particular time, I've been saying this since 2007, before that, because Uranus was in Aries for 7 years. It just moved into Taurus last year, either March or May. And so it's all about the I am. So it's about coming home and really, and everybody's into, I want to manifest the law of attraction, whatever. What you're not going to manifest or attract anything until you clean yourself up at a soul level, at a physical level, whatever. And so I just want to share that. And anything else you want to share, tell people how they can get a hold of you. And I think both of you are doing some teaching and doing some workshops and stuff, and do private readings. And then I'll make sure on the hashtags it is, and you can all go and look at the underneath on the YouTube. There's a trailer for the book. There's my website. There's a lot of things that I'll make sure that you're both, everything's there. And so if you just want to have some last minute wisdom, and tell them how they can get a hold of you. Whatever you haven't said, just say. I think it's good.
Well, anyone can find me on my website, which is NicolePowell.ca, or join me on my Facebook page, which is Nicole Powell Spiritual Medium, which I try and stay in contact and in the loop and keep people up to date with what I'm up to. But my last message is just for women who are listening to this going, oh yeah, right, like I'm ever going to meet a guy like that, right? And so I hear that story quite a bit. And it's quite common that women will come to me, it's like they'll put their whole life on hold because they're so trying to find the perfect partner, right? And I really feel it's like when you truly honor yourself and what you came here to do and your purpose and your service, those people show up around you. It's not the other way around. You don't go looking for these people and then find your purpose. You know, it's like attracts like, you're magnetic. So it's like when you're fully in service, empowered, enjoying life, really feeling purposeful, that's when Mr. Right does show up, that complements your energy and suits you. Because to me, it's unfortunate that it has to wait till you're 40 or 50 before you find that, you know? It's like,
Right.
you can find that now. And I did meet Matthew at 26. And it was, like I said, when I was launching my career. So
Perfect. Perfect. Thanks, Nicole.
Mm-hmm.
Matthew.
I am perfectly imperfect. And I'm a work in progress. And, you know, when I met Nicole, you know, there was still a flavor of the knight in shining armor within me, right? And I had to do and I continue to do my own reflection. And, you know, there's always these things that come up. And, you know, what I would say to anyone is that, yeah, it's like, you know, even when you meet Mr. Right, there's or Mrs. Right, there's the growth that goes through that. There's the polishing that happens. And so, you know, it's, you know, I feel so blessed every morning to wake up with Nicole, and we've got our little dog. I actually met our dog on the same day that I met Nicole, so I had a 2-for-1.
Wow.
And that was just, you know, she has been a guiding light in our relationship too, actually, in many ways. So it's, you know, I recognize that I've got these gifts, and these gifts become more illuminated through going inwards and doing my shadow work, and not seeing the shadow as bad, you know, not to fear the shadow. A lot of times people feel, if I crack that open, I'm just going to be a hot mess for the rest of my life. And it's your attitude towards it. If I look at it as, this is what's wrong with me and I got to get rid of it, then I'm going to be constantly meeting that in my relationship. But if I can see it as, oh wow, there's a gift through this, the light is shining through that crack, right? The light shines through my cracks, right? The cracks in my consciousness, the light shines through, and it makes me who I am. It makes our journey, you know, what we are. And so, you know, what I could say is that Nicole has helped illuminate my gifts in ways that I probably wouldn't have seen on my own. And she continues to, you know, she's my greatest support in so many ways. And though we continue to offer things individually, we journey together. And we're going to be doing, you know, a blending of Nicole's mastery of painting and trance painting with the work of the Gene Keys coming up very soon.
Perfect.
And so there are ways that we co-create, and then there are ways that we operate individually. So, you know, it is like Nicole mentioned that word, interdependency, where it's, you know, we don't have, when I first met her, I had the neediness about me. I can say that. I was coming from a codependent place. And now it's like we can spend days apart, you know, and you know, want to join with one another again when she returns from a travel, or, you know, from downstairs because the studio's downstairs. But it's, you know, it's coming from that space of enjoying one another's company, or wanting to grow and feed off one another in such another way that we're feeding like vampires, but feeding inspiration off one another.
Exactly. Yeah, because that's one of my favorite words in Game Changer, and I respect relationship so much, Matthew. I really do, and I think it's such a beautiful thing. But I do know that there is a lot of parasites and there's a lot of vampires, and they can just suck the life and the energy out of you. Okay, and so a good relationship will make you, and a wrong relationship will break you physically, financially, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. And so that's why, for me, one of the biggest decisions that you'll make in your life is the relationship you get into. And since lately, it's like it's a return on investment. And it's not so much, it is, life is a business. And when you realize how important you are, you will be more discerning and take the time to find out about yourself and discover yourself and make sure that you really know. And part of the thing with Game Changer, the whole first chapter is 8 different areas of life that you have to answer questions about. And those are the tough questions. And a lot of times is like when you meet, we're meeting at a sexual kind of a lustful thing. And what is it? One of the hormones, I think it's Oxycontin or one of them is there. And sometimes you're not thinking as straight, and people can be manipulated now. Okay, and people will say to me, oh, Sandra, you see the dark. I see the white and I see the dark. I see both. It's a combination, okay? And just as it is, if you want to have a really good life, you will honor, and it's about love. It's about loving, valuing, and finding your own worth. And it's interesting that Uranus is in Taurus right now. So we have a 7 years. So for those of you that are young and you still have time, because you're going to be asked to find your worth, your value, self. And you might go through 1 or 2 marriages. I don't know what you're going to go through. It's your choice. But who's ever listening, it's a beautiful time to take the time to find out about yourself. And I want to thank both of you. And now I say goodbye to everybody. I say goodbye to you.